How does a modern, educated, cultured country just descend into utter madness? To really get our heads around the rise of Nazism, we're not going to start where you'd expect. No, we're going to start at the very end of the story. So picture this. It's the spring of 1945. Germany has clearly lost the war. There's this 11-year-old boy, Helmuth, and he's in bed, pretending to be asleep. And he overhears his father, a doctor, a respected man, and a loyal Nazi, talking to his mother. And the tone in his voice, it's pure terror. He's confessing what he knows is coming for them now that it's all over.
And then, the very next day, that same father takes Helmuth for one last walk in the woods. They sing some children's songs together, and later that afternoon, his father goes into his office and shoots himself. I mean, the trauma was so deep that for the next 9 years, little Helmuth was absolutely convinced his own mother was trying to poison him.
And that right there, that's the question at the heart of all of this. What could possibly drive a man and an entire nation to this point, to a place of such total moral and physical collapse? To answer that, well, we have to rewind the clock.
You see, the story of how the Nazis took over really starts with the democracy that came right before them, a government that was basically born out of the wreckage of World War I. So, Germany loses World War I in 1918. The emperor runs away, and this new democratic government is formed. They meet in a city called Weimar, which is why we call it the Weimar Republic. But here's the thing. It was in trouble from day one. It was a democracy founded on total, nationwide humiliation.
And the source of all that humiliation? It was the Treaty of Versailles. This wasn't just a peace treaty, oh no. This was a punishment, designed to cripple Germany. They lost land, valuable resources, all their colonies, and their military was basically taken apart. And worst of all, they were forced to take all the blame for the war and pay these absolutely crushing reparations. So who did the German people blame for this disaster? You'd think they'd blame the generals who actually lost the war, right? Nope. They blamed the new democratic government that had to sign the treaty. And they gave them this toxic nickname, the November Criminals. This created this poisonous myth that Germany hadn't really been defeated, but had been stabbed in the back by its own politicians. And that idea just poisoned everything from the very start.
Now, a political crisis, maybe they could have survived that on its own. But then, on top of this incredibly shaky political foundation, came a total and complete economic catastrophe.
In 1923, Germany couldn't make its reparation payments, so the government made this absolutely disastrous decision. They just started printing more money. And the result? Well, the speed of the collapse is it's mind-boggling. In April, $1 gets you 24,000 German marks. By December, it gets you nearly 100 million. The money was literally worthless.
And you gotta understand, this wasn't some abstract number on a chart. This was a daily nightmare. We're talking literally hauling wheelbarrows piled high with useless banknotes just to go out and buy a loaf of bread. Imagine that. That image of chaos was burned into the country's memory.
Okay, so things did calm down for a little while, mostly thanks to American loans. But it was all a house of cards. The whole German recovery was, as they said, built on sand. Because when the Wall Street crash hit in 1929, boom, those American loans disappeared overnight, and the German economy just completely imploded. And the human costs? Oh, it was just staggering. We're talking 6 million people out of work. People's life savings completely wiped out. You can just feel this deep sense of hopelessness gripping the country. And the democratic government? They seemed totally powerless to do anything about it.
So what happens when you have economic collapse, a paralyzed government, and nationwide despair all at the same time? You get this perfect storm, this vacuum. And who steps right into that vacuum? Adolf Hitler.
I mean, just look at this. In 1928, before the crash, the Nazis, they were a joke. A tiny fringe party getting just over 2% of the vote. Fast forward just 4 years, right into the heart of the Depression, and suddenly they're the biggest party in the entire country. The change is just breathtaking. So how on earth do they pull that off? Well, Hitler was an absolute master of propaganda. He gave people simple, powerful answers to their very complex problems. He promised strength, he promised to restore their dignity, he promised jobs, and, this is the scary part, he promised to get rid of all foreign influences. For a country that had lost everything, this sounded like salvation.
And it wasn't just what he was saying, It was how he was saying it. The Nazis basically invented a new kind of politics, one that was all about spectacle.
These huge rallies with giant banners and thousands of people saluting in unison. It was all designed to make people feel like they were part of something powerful, something bigger than themselves. And it made Hitler look like some kind of messiah.
So, on January 30th, 1933, the old German leaders, the traditional politicians, they make one of the worst mistakes in history. They think they can control Hitler, so they make him chancellor. But the second he got power, he started tearing down democracy with just terrifying speed.
And the way he did it, it was so chillingly methodical. First, this mysterious fire breaks out in the Parliament building. The Nazis immediately blame their enemies. They use that as the perfect excuse to pass the fire decree, which gets rid of all basic civil rights, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, poof, gone overnight. And then came the final nail in the coffin, the Enabling Act. And that was basically the end. It made Hitler a dictator.
And just like that, in a matter of weeks, German democracy was gone. Dead. The Nazis banned every other political party and took complete control of the newspapers, the courts, the whole economy. And to make sure nobody could fight back, they built this terrifying police state, the Gestapo, the SS, where anyone could be an enemy.
But here's the really scary part. Getting total power? That was never the end goal for them. That was just the beginning. The real goal was to unleash their twisted and deadly ideology on the world.
At the absolute heart of Nazism was this deeply twisted, racist fantasy. See, they believed in a strict racial ladder. At the very top, you had the so-called Aryan master race, who they thought were destined to rule the world. And at the very, very bottom, they put the Jewish people. And this wasn't just, simple prejudice. This was a political weapon. They used Jewish people as a scapegoat for everything. The lost war, the bad economy, you name it.
Okay, so the other huge piece of the puzzle is this idea they had called Lebensraum, which just means living space. Hitler believed that his master race needed more land to expand. And where was he going to get it? By conquering it, by force, mostly in Eastern Europe. This meant getting rid of the people who already lived there, the inferior Slavic peoples, to create this huge, racially pure German empire. It was basically a blueprint for war and for genocide, all wrapped up in one.
And they didn't waste any time putting this hateful ideology into practice. The Nuremberg Laws of 1935, these weren't just laws, these were legal weapons. They stripped Jewish people of their citizenship, made it legal for them to marry other Germans, and seized their businesses. It was a cold, calculated process of turning their neighbors into outcasts, step by painful step. And all of it was just setting the stage for something much, much worse.
So, here we are, by the late 1930s, and all the pieces are on the board. You have a totalitarian state in complete control, an entire legal system built on racial hatred, and a nation that is either mesmerized or terrified into silence. And that leaves us with a final, chilling question. What happens next? What happens when this carefully built machine of hatred moves beyond just laws and into its next, even more brutal phase?